All right, ladies and gentlemen, back to another video. So we are going to revisit the loanable funds market. Okay, so if you weren't so sure about it the last time, all right, you can we'll do a really quick overview, and then I want to show you something else with the loanable funds market. All right, so let's go back to, we had Goofy with some money, and we have Uncle Sam. Okay, so let's look at this for a second. We have Goofy, Taz, and Woody they have money, they want to save the money, right? So they're savers. They're supplying the loanable funds market. So if they save less, supply goes down. If they save more, supply of loanable funds goes up. Okay, so savers, anything that changes savers is going to change the supply curve. Now, the government, and it could be government, it could be business, it could be consumers, right? For right now, I'm just using the government for this explanation. The government is the demand side. So borrowers, no matter who they are the demand side of the loanable funds market. If they demand more, the demand curve shifts to the right. If they demand less, the demand curve shifts to the left. All right, so we have our supply and we have our demand here. So let's take our graph, right? Loanable funds market. The real interest rate is currently 4% in the market, all right? Then in 2009, the federal government has a deficit of $1.4 trillion. What do we mean by that? We mean that the revenue coming in, the spending was $1.4 trillion more than the revenue we brought in 2009. Okay, so they have to borrow, right? So we're on the demand side of the curve here. So the federal government has to demand $1.4 trillion of loanable funds, right? The reason the number is so big there is we were in a financial crisis. So they demand $1.4 trillion. This causes our demand curve to shift to the right. Rightward shift leads to an increase in real interest rates. So the federal government's deficit caused real interest rates to rise. Now, next, we have $1.3 trillion worth of spending by the federal government, or $1.3 trillion more than they took in of spending. That means they have to demand more money. So the demand curve shifts to the right, causing the real interest rate to rise to 8%. So proponents of Keynesian economics said, look at these deficits. All of these huge deficits here are causing the demand curve to shift right and causing real interest rates to rise. So what they said was, because of this and the higher interest rate, investors, firms investing in capital, and consumers who are looking to buy cars and refrigerators and washing machines, things like those, they're putting those purchases off because they can't afford the interest rate that's required. Right? So I'm not going to buy the new car because the interest rate's too high. Why is interest rate too high? Federal government, because of their demand, increased the real interest rate. Proponents of Keynesian economics said this is what's called crowding out. The government has crowded out the private sector in the loanable funds market. Right? It makes perfect sense until the Keynesians come back and say, really, deficit spending crowded out the private sector. I understood that we were deficit spending to get out of the recession because the private sector wasn't spending on capital or consumer goods. So who did we crowd out? There was no one there to be crowded out. All right? So that was the crowding out theory. All right, this video is a little longer than it should have been, so I am going to pause it at this point. All right? All right, have a good day.